Travis.
Okay. Okay, we are recording, so we're almost there. We'll be Facebooking here in a second. And I guess I need to let Rebecca in. Oh, no, thank you.
Facebook is going.
It's going. All right. Hi,
Yeah,
Facebook.
that's not a great camera angle.
Yeah, interesting. It's already messed up, isn't it? Hey. Okay, well, hey, everybody. Let's see. Let's see, will it work?
It was a really good view of the top of your head, though, for a minute.
Yeah.
No bald spots.
Wait a second. Shouldn't be no bald spot there. Not yet. Give me a few more years. All right. We're live. Hello, Facebook friends and everybody else. And I'm pretty far from my computer, Travis and Sarah, so if you guys can try and keep up with that. So Karen can come in. I haven't seen Karen in a while. Nice to have her back. All right, we got 16, and that's when I start. As long as we got 16, we're good. So perfect. Let me pray for us. Father, we are truly grateful. You give us a chance to get together again every week, and it's always a different group of people, but a lot of the same. And I'm just thankful for the relationships that are being built and a little bit of extra knowledge and just getting to hang out in your word and move forward a little bit without that strict dogmatic box. So help us to think wisely and respectfully and humbly, especially when it comes to dealing with each other and our differences of opinion. And we will give you the praise in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. I think most of us at this point know what we're doing here. So the one sentence review is, we're trying to take some academic stuff and bring it down. And we really don't theologize an awful lot, but at least today we'll start thinking a little bit of theology and asking some questions. But I'm a biblical studies doctorate, so I don't know a lot about theology. So I try to stay away from areas that are not my thing. And by the way, somebody asked me that the other day. Like, I talk about biblical studies versus theology. They're very different things, right? Biblical studies is dealing with the text. I'm going to try and tell you what the text says, and then we can decide how it moves or what it wants to do with us, how we want to understand all of it together. That's kind of the theology part, like the study of God, when we start putting it together and tracing it. I'm really looking just at the text itself and trying to wrestle with the hermeneutics that's dealt with there. So even today, you're going to see that a lot. We'll talk about 3 major texts and a few other extra ones. And then for the last 15 or 20 minutes, I just want to ask, all right, so how does this help us? Who cares? Why does this matter? And should it, do we have to come up with answers to this kind of stuff? And so our questions are, what about all these crazy monsters that we've been dealing with in the Bible? So these 66 books that they compiled together into some sacred library. We've looked at all these monsters, cherubim and seraphim, and yeah, they're monsters. If you haven't been following, they're crazy, weird stuff happening going on. Angels and demons. We haven't gotten to the dragons yet. That's coming. We haven't gotten to the giants. That's coming. But we started last week talking about ghosts, which is the word Rephaim, and actually also another word, oath, as well. So there's 2 words here. Let's see, is this going to follow me? I have to look at myself. Nope, wait, it's not following me anymore. Okay, this is the problem with new fun things. Okay, are you with me? Stay with me. Okay, go all the way over here. All right, good.
Oh.
Rephaim. All right, you guys can see all that? See, wait, I can make you see it even better. Let's see. Okay, follow me. I'm learning this too. You guys will have to be patient as I try and figure this out. Okay, so watch this. Okay, Rephaim, and then there's another word. You know what? I can't remember how to spell that. No, I don't think that's right. Huh. It's the word ov. Okay, so, and I can't remember whether it's with an olive or a cyan or anyway. Ov, which just means ghost or shade or jinn or, you name it. This is the same idea, living dead. Okay, so the living dead is, something that goes to Sheol or to hell is how we might say it in English sometimes. The place of Sa'al, right, which is probably an old god, right? But we just call it Sheol, the place of the dead or the netherworld. It shows up as Eretz. Sometimes that's not right either. My goodness, I'm losing my. We just stop writing in Hebrew. That would really help us. If I didn't prepare for it, I have to think of how it's spelled in Hebrew. All right, so Eretz, like the word earth or land. Okay, so this all can be like netherworld or underworld or something like that. Okay, so this is just all review from what we talked about last week. So, okay. So Rephaim and Ov or ghost. Rephaim also has, when we get to it, it's also the word that's most often used for giants. Okay, so it's the ancestors, the past mythical ancestors. It's the place of, you remember the Canaanites, what they used to be like before the Canaanites that are there now. Or when we're telling stories about how we defeated the bad guys, we monsterize them. You understand that concept? Right? We make them into monsters. We'll talk a lot about that when we get to the giants. Okay, how we create monsters out of people. Today use the word demonize. Right? We demonize people. We make them the bad guys so that we can destroy them easily. Okay, that's the same thing that they do. All right, so let's take this away so you can follow me. Excellent. All right. So that's the Rephaim. That's the ghosts. That's the. Oh, wait, Riston's loving it. Okay, good. I have power on my camera now. You're impressed with this? All right, good. It worked. It worked one time. I practiced for like an hour on all this. So just for your benefit there. All right, so here's where we're at. We are talking about these Rephaim, and we left on Isaiah chapter 14, verse 9. Okay, so we looked at that for a minute, and I just wanted to bring us back to that spot, and then we'll look at a few other passages. But Isaiah 14, 9 is what we call a Kina, Q-I-N-A, okay, Kina, and that is like a funerary text, a lament, a complaint, a funerary complaint. It's probably the best way of understanding it, and that's what this is. And it's addressed to the king of Babylon in view of his imminent death. So he's about to die. It's a complaint about this going on. And it says this, 14:9, it says Sheol, again, right there. Sheol beneath is stirred up to meet you when you come. It rouses the shades to greet you. All who are leaders of the earth, it raises from their thrones all who are kings of the nations. Okay, so Sheol beneath is stirred up to meet you when you come. Like you're getting ready to go. Sheol's coming up to get you. Like all the dead people are going to meet you now. You're a dead person. And they're coming together. And the shades come up. All who are leaders of the earth. Again, remember the ancient leaders, the ancient kings. They're coming. They're dead now, but they're alive kind of too. So they're dead, but they're rising up to meet him. Like, hey, here you are. We're glad you're here. Or we're not glad you're here. Okay, so they're all leaders. They're all kings. They rise to greet him as an equal, or lesser, actually, not even an equal, because he's going to die without a burial. He's going to die without a name. He has no reputation, no offspring. And then obviously it's from below. They're going down, which is that Sheol beneath, that concept there. And from the pit, if you go all the way to verse 15, you'll see that word pit. Okay, but just read a couple more verses here, 10 and 11. They'll all respond to you saying, you too have become weak as we are. You have become like us. Your pomp has been brought down to Sheol along with the music of your harps. Maggots are your bed and worms your blanket. So, I mean, he's dead. Okay, but he's talking, he's greeting people. So it's living dead. Again, just a metaphor, just a picture of this, what happens when you go, and then, goes into how he's fallen from heaven, morning star. You guys remember this because we talked about this with the Hasatan, right? The Satan character in this passage. So the morning star, the assembly on Mount Zaphon, which is the northern mountain. So it's the Canaanite place of worship, kind of like Sinai is for for Israel. It's the place where they meet God. It's the assembly of the divine council meets there. Okay. All right. Let's make sure Suzanne's getting in here. Travis. Okay. Yeah. All right. So that's it. That's kind of where we left. Last time's not it. I got a lot more, but that's where we left last time. So we can transition into the new ones. So let's look at Isaiah 26:14, specifically 14 and 19. Now, this is in what we call the Apocalypse of Isaiah. So it's chapter 24 through 27. We call it the Apocalypse passage in Isaiah. And 26:14 will talk about the dead in each of these places. The dead will be dead. They will be unable to be roused. They will be dead. And then in verse 19, just 5 verses later, they're going to be roused. They're going to get up. Okay. And most people see this as something to do with the Baal myth from a long time ago, the Ugaritic myths that we talked about, Ras Shamra. Someone remembers it at least. So in Ugarit, they have all these great myths about Baal and Mot and, battles that took place in their Canaanite pantheon, these gods that are up that. So they're going to wake up, they're going to live, but they're still going to be dead. So the Baals do not rise. And then by verse 19, it seems like there is something rising, something's getting up. And it's probably, the idea here is probably similar to the Ezekiel 37 passage. You guys remember Ezekiel 37? The dead bones. Dead bones are rattling. I don't know what it is. At least you guys from First Pres will remember the dead bones rattling. That song, Rattle. So, okay, I guess I should have read it. Anybody want to read verse 14? So I'll be quiet for a second. Anything to get Jace to shut up for a second.
I can read it.
Thanks, Fran.
The dead do not live, shades do not rise, because you have punished and destroyed them and wiped out all memory of them. But you
Okay,
have...
so they can't do it, right? They can't rise, they can't change, they're dead. Because you've wiped out all memory of them. We talked about that last time too. But God doesn't even remember them. God ghosts the ghosts. Right? He doesn't remember them. Okay, keep going, Fran. Go to 19.
But you have increased the nation, O Lord. You have increased the nation. You are glorified. You have enlarged all the borders of the land. O Lord, in distress they sought you. They poured out a prayer when your chastening was on them. Like a woman with child who writhes and cries out in her pangs when she is near her time, so were we because of you, O Lord. We were with child, we writhed, but we gave birth only to wind. We have won no victories on earth, and no one is born to inhabit the world. Your dead shall live, their corpses shall rise. O dwellers in the dust, awake and sing for joy, for your dew is a radiant dew, and the earth will give birth to those long dead.
Perfect. All right, so verse 19, that's the key there. Your dead will live. Okay, so they weren't going to live. Now he's giving some sort of hope in Isaiah in this apocalypse, right? They're going to, their bodies are going to rise. Awake and sing, those of you who have been dead, dwelling in the dust. You've been asleep, you've been dead. Now you're going to awake and sing again. Everything's going to be good. Your dew is like the dew of the morning, and the earth will bring forth her dead. Again, Eretz, right? That's this one here, Eretz. The land or the netherworld. It's the same word, by the way. Anytime you see the word land or earth in the Bible, it's Eretz. And you've got to figure out, is it talking about the underworld or is it talking about like just the land? Like Eretz Yisrael, right? The land of Israel. That doesn't mean the dead in Israel. It means the land, that you go to. But you have to figure that out. So this is the earth. The earth covers up over those who are dead underneath. They're in a grave. And sometimes the earth is going to get rolled back or it's going to open up and the dead are going to come forth. Okay, and that's the great hope of Ezekiel 37, is that the kings of old, that the soldiers, the host of the armies are going to rise again. That's not about you, by the way. Ezekiel 37 is not about you getting up from the dead and resurrecting one day. It's a beautiful picture, but that's not what it's about. It's not about anybody actually getting up from the dead. It's Israel will rise again after the exile. Right? They've sent into death. They've been exiled into this land of Babylon / Assyria, this foreign land, and now they're going to go back. And so they're going to rise again. They're going to come back to life. Okay, so it's resurrection metaphorically, not actually. All right, let's see here. Let's talk about anything you guys want to mention about that? Just trying to show you the text where it actually shows up. These words show up about ghosts. There is a passage in the Peshitta. So this is probably helpful to some people. So let's move over here. First of all, let's give myself, see if it'll do it for me. Come on. It's not going to do it, is it? There we go. Yes. Okay. Next time I'm going to invest in an eraser. That's my next move. Anybody want to send me an eraser from Amazon for next week? That would be great. None of you sent me cameras or whiteboards, but maybe someone will give me an eraser.
So 18 will show up tomorrow.
That's right. Yeah, don't send me an eraser, please. I don't need 18. I can afford an eraser for this. Okay, so the Peshitta, we did talk about this a little bit when we talked about the canon. Some of you might remember the different books. We talked about Targums. We talked about the pseudepigrapha. So there's an eraser in my desk drawer. Oh, that would have been helpful before. Thank you. But your desk drawer is very far away. So, so the Peshitta is an Assyriac version of the Bible. So there's lots of different versions, right? We have an English one. That's what you guys are reading. But this is a Syriac version. And it talks about, it says, you will make the land of the giants perish. Okay, so this is one of those Rephaim words that they translate as giants in this particular case. And it establishes that link between Rephaim, the ancestors of old, being people who are coming back to life, but also that are giant creatures. That, you know, they live in this mythological world, this half-breed kind of thing that's going on. And we'll get to that when we start talking about the Nephilim again. I saw a great post today. A friend of mine said, I don't know anybody I can send this to, but it's basically a picture of a restaurant, and it has a picture taped to it, a sign on the door out by the patio, and it says, due to unforeseen circumstances, no, I can't remember what it says. Due to consistent problems, we must insist no conversations about the Nephilim on the patio anymore, or something like that. So I'll send that out when we get there. But all right, so Nephilim is one of those. The Anakim are the giants, the sons of Anak. So we'll get to all of those things later, I promise. But Peshitta Syriac talks about this. The inhabitants of Syria, the inhabitants of Transjordan, up. This is Mediterranean, Europe, Africa, right? So it's this area up here, Syria. This whole thing here is like Assyria, Babylon, Persia, etc., just to keep your big picture map in your mind. Okay, so also not important. Okay, so there's also a few little comments about the noises that ghosts make. Because you all care about such things, I thought I would bring that too. They make the noises like chirps and buzzes, and it all depends on how you translate these weird little words. But there is a passage in Isaiah 8:19, which we will not dwell on, but I wanted you to see that it was there just for fun. Let's get rid of this so you can come back to me. Yes. Okay. It says this, Isaiah 8:19 says, now, if people say to you, consult the ghosts and the familiar spirits that chirp and mutter, that's what my translation says. Should not people consult their gods, the dead, on behalf of the living? So most translations are going to interpret whatever that word is, that ov word there, as like mediums or necromancers or, witches, something like that. It's really just the word for ghosts, but it's the ghosts. Like it's the people who move the ghosts. Okay, so it's the same word that you're going to use there. It's the goat. We don't know if it's the ghosts that mutter and chirp, or if it's the wizard, the people who the soothsayers that bring them up and they mutter and chirp in order to get them to come up, like they're calling them, they're giving them animal signals or something like that, right? But anyway, they make these weird noises apparently, as obviously dead people would, right? You've seen Walking Dead; they make weird noises, right? That's just modern day mythology of people who are coming up from the dead. We have our own, but they have their own. Isaiah 29:3-4 says, I will encamp against you on all sides. I will encircle you with towers and set up my siege works against you. Brought low, you will speak from the ground. Your speech will mumble out of the dust. Your voice will come ghost-like from the earth. Out of the dust, your speech will whisper. So I don't know what's happening here, but there's whispers, there's mumblings, there's ghost-like sounds. You know what our ghost-like sounds are, right? This is modern day. Ooh. Okay, there's chains in the attic. The ghost is walking around. So this is going to be the way the Bible is too, right? It has its myths, its understanding of the way things are. Now, theology is now taking that information and saying, this is what ghosts are. Right? Here is the way ghosts do. They mutter and they chirp. There it is. It's in Isaiah. Done. We now know ghosts mutter and chirp. We don't know what that means, but we know they do that. Okay. And I would say, we don't know anything. Like, we just know the way the people of that time thought about ghosts. That was their way of thinking about it. And we don't know if they thought they really did that or they just played just like I just did. Right? When I did it, a bunch of you smiled because you don't really think ghosts do that, but yet you played with your kids that same way. Ooh, right? We don't know what they really believe versus what they're just going along with the mythology of the moment. Okay, does that make sense that we have mythology and they had mythology? Right? We have our understanding of dragons. They had their understanding. They had 7 heads. Ours doesn't. We have a big body with tiny little wings that barely could support the weight of the dragon. Right? Everybody's got a different way of looking at their mythology. All right. Now let's get into what do we do with this passage? Let's talk about this weird lady who brings up from the dead the prophet of old. So it's at the very end of 1 Samuel, or right in the middle of the book of Samuel, if you want to see it that way, because there's 2 Samuels in the Hebrew text. There's just one. Why are there 2? Because it's too long to fit on one scroll. That's why. So there's 2 Samuel and 1 Samuel. We've got 1 Samuel, just chapter 28. And we call it the Witch of Endor, which just sounds super cool. Okay, I don't know if she's a witch. Endor is just a place, not where the Ewoks live. Those of you who are from my generation, it's not that place. There's no speeder bikes. There's no Ruba Kuba. No, what did they? I can't remember the celebration. What was the song that they sang? Kuba Humba. I don't know. Anyway, pop culture trying, not working. All right, so let's look at 1 Samuel 28. Let's just read it because it's a fun story and it'll give us some context for what's going on. Who wants to start reading right there at the beginning?
I've got it.
All right.
In
You're on
those days, the Philistines gathered their forces of war to fight against Israel. Achish said to David, "You know, of course, that you and your men are to go out with me in the army." And David said to Achish, Very well, then, you shall know what your servant can do. Achish said to David, very well, I will make you my bodyguard for life.
Okay, so stop right there just for a second. David, right? This is a story about David. Samuel is a story about David. The Holy Spirit has left Saul at this point, and moved to David, his neighbor, is what the text is going to tell us later on. Okay, this passage is written to make sure that you know as a reader that the Holy Spirit's done with Saul. Okay, now there's some political ideology going on here, as there always is. This is a propaganda movement. Okay, whoever is writing this passage does not like Saul and does like David. It's really quite like that simple. Okay, so if I'm going to tell you a story about President Trump and I really like President Trump, I'm going to tell you the story the way I want to tell it to you. You might notice that on every news channel in the world, right? They tell you whether you're going to agree with Trump or not agree with Trump in the first sentence. Okay, like that. This is just the way they do it. Okay, that's what this is. This is political propaganda. Okay, that doesn't mean it's wrong or evil. It's just they're people of their time. They're writing and they're trying to argue what they think is right. David's the guy for the job, not Saul anymore. This chapter, chapter 28, is a very strangely placed text. So if you're reading through 1 Samuel, you're going to probably notice what most critical scholars notice. Remember, when I say critical scholars, these aren't people who just like to critique the text. These are people who think historical critically. They think these are texts that came from different places. Okay, they came from different stories, and somebody took them and compiled them together. A really brilliant redactor or editor has put all these texts together. Chapter 28, you can see quite clearly, especially if you're reading in the Hebrew, that this text did not belong there originally. Okay, that this text was probably not a story about Saul at all. It was a story about some unknown necromancer who did something, and they grabbed hold of this story and they put it in this place. Okay, it's still God's word, still beautiful, still tells a story. We want to figure out what the story is, right? This is the same case if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 17. You're going to see that there's a story that's added there that probably was about somebody else before that. Okay, but they grabbed hold of that story. 1 Samuel 17 is, remember the little shepherd, only a boy named David, only a rippling brook, only a boy on 5 spoons. You remember that story? David and Goliath story? Just nod your heads like you've heard of David and Goliath. Thank you. All right. We know what you're talking about, Jace. We're just tired of listening to you sing. Okay. So that story is the same thing, right? It probably wasn't about David. It was probably about Elkanah, who's going to show up later on in 1 Samuel, and is going to show up again in Chronicles as the killer of Goliath, right? But in chapter 17, the story we all know, David kills Goliath. This is how critical scholars work through these kinds of things. They notice things like, well, how come Elkanah says that he's the one who did it twice? Because we want to grab that story and we want to put it in the mythology, the mythography of David. We want that to be our story. Like, yes, because Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his tens of thousands. He even killed the giants of old, the Rephaim, okay, the Philistines, the monsters of their time. Okay, that's how it works. Anyway, so this is chapter 28, and it's been pulled from somewhere else. Doesn't need to matter to us, just extra free parts there, in case you like critical studies and how historical critical works. Fran, please continue with verse 3, but I might cut in at any time and annoy people. So go ahead.
Okay. Now Samuel had died, and all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in Ramah, his own city. Saul had expelled the mediums and the wizards from the land. The Philistines.
Mediums and wizards, right? Those are those words again. Okay? These are the oafs. These are the ghosts. He's gotten rid of them. People, the necromancers, things like that. Okay, keep going.
The Philistines assembled and came and encamped at Shunem. Saul gathered all Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. When Saul inquired of the Lord did not answer him, not by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by prophets. What's Urim?
Okay, hold on a second. All right, so note that Saul is trembling about the Philistines. Okay, this is a pretty big theme throughout the book. The Philistines are trying to encroach on Israel's land. Of course, Israel stole it, but whatever, right? They're trying to encroach on the land, and the Philistines are the bad guys, and Saul is trembling. We're going to have some more trembling going on in the story a little bit later. There's only a couple of ways, maybe 3 ways, that you can get answers to the future. Okay, one is you go to a prophet. Okay, the prophet is going to give you that answer. He's going to tell you what it is, like Daniel. Remember that, right? We want to know what this dream means, and he says, here's what it means, and this is how it applies to you. The other way is the Urim, or throwing of lots, right, which is just by chance, but God directed chance. And the other one is by dreams, that God just shows up and gives you an answer. Okay? The problem is for Saul, none of that's working. Okay, this is not working. One way you can't do it, well, is about to happen. Fran?
Then Saul said to his servants, "Seek out for me a woman who is a medium, so that I may go to her and inquire of her." His servants said to him, "There's a medium at Endor." So Saul disguised himself and put on other clothes and went there, he and 2 men with him. They came to the woman by night, and he said, "Consult a spirit for me and bring up for me the one whom I named to you." And the woman said to him, "Surely you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the wizards from the land. Why then are you laying a snare for my life to bring about my death?"
Okay,
But
hold on. Good job. All right. So he goes to a medium at Endor, just this normal location. And he disguises himself. He doesn't want to be seen as the king. And apparently it works pretty well, because she doesn't know who he is. And we find out here that he asks for her to bring up a ghost of whoever he names. He's going to name somebody, you bring up the ghost. Okay, he's not going to name the person, but even still, that's what he says to do. And the woman says, "I'm not allowed to do that. Saul, the king, said we're not allowed to do that anymore." So Saul is the one who made the rule that you can't do this. Well, God made the rule, Leviticus, but Saul is keeping to that rule, and now Saul is the one breaking that rule. So obviously the author of this wants to see Saul as somebody who does whatever he feels like in order to get what he wants. Right? He needs an answer from God, and he's going to get it even by disobeying God. All right, keep going, Fran. Sorry about that.
But Saul swore to her by the Lord, "As the Lord lives, no punishment shall come upon you for this thing." And then the woman said, "Whom shall I bring up for you?" And he answered, "Bring up Samuel for me."
Okay,
Where
so
the
now
woman,
we said who we want. Sorry, go ahead.
when the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman said to Saul, "Why have you deceived me? You are Saul." And the king said to her, "Have no fear. What do you see?" And the woman said to Saul, "I see a divine being coming up out of the ground." And he said to her, "What is his appearance?" And she said, "An old man is coming up. He is wrapped in a robe." So Saul knew that it was Samuel, and he bowed with his face to the ground and did obeisance.
Okay, hold
Then,
on, just hold on. You knew we were going to stop. That was the end of a paragraph. Go on. All right.
okay.
So, what did you notice right there? Did you notice anything interesting? I keep telling you all the interesting stuff, so instead I should ask you.
It's kind of interesting that, like, the woman, like, as soon as she calls up the spirit or whatever, like, she all of a sudden knows it's Saul. But then Saul doesn't realize it's Samuel. Like, so what's happened there? It feels like there's some information missing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the keys to that critical understanding that I was giving you before, that this doesn't fit here, right? That all of a sudden she recognizes who it is, that it's Saul, because she sees Samuel. So it might be that we're just missing information in the story, like, Samuel says, "Oh, crud, is that Saul?" or something like that. But that's not in the story, so we have to speculate there. But she does seem to notice it. She now all of a sudden has this information. So we don't know why, but that is very, very good. And of course, he says, don't fear. He was fearing, right? He was trembling before. Now she's trembling. And he says, don't worry, don't fear, don't be afraid. And then how does he know who it is? What's her description?
An old dude with a robe.
Old man wrapped in a robe.
That's gotta be.
It's an old man with a robe. Like, oh yeah, the guy with the robe. Yeah, that's Samuel. Like, apparently he's the guy who wears a robe. Okay, and he has a reputation for wearing a robe. You know, a special robe, probably. You know, like a prophet's robe.
But she also describes him in my translation as a god. I think the other one said divine being, which is an interesting description for Samuel.
Yep, and it is exactly that word, Elohim.
Okay.
So it's not a ghost. It's not anything else. So, and remember, Elohim doesn't mean God. So a divine being is probably the best translation of that. So he's a God. He's something different. He's in a class of his own. And here's where we have to start theologizing. Okay, wait, are gods, are those also Rephaim? Are those Ov? Are they ghosts? Are dead people actually gods? Right? Or you just need to say, this is just another way of explaining something that is very mysterious to the people at that time, right? It's something that's not man and it's not Yahweh. It's something in between and it's creepy, right? If you met a god on the road, you would have concerns, right? In fact, Jacob meets one, remember? Meets an angel and wrestles with it, and we find out that it was actually God. Moses meets something in the bush, right? That was an angel, but also God somehow. Like these divine beings, that are all over the place. Some of them are downright scary. Some of them seem nice. We've been focusing on the scary ones. But, yep. All right, so Saul knows that it's Samuel and bows down. Did you notice in here, like when you know the story, if you see the pictures, even if you saw the picture that I put on Facebook, right? There's a picture of a ghost standing there next to the witch and him prostrate in front of it, right? As if he can see it. But I don't see anything in this text that says he can see it. This is more of a Patrick Swayze, Whoopi Goldberg kind of like, right? From Ghost. You can't, she's just translating it, I think.
The text says he can't see it. It says,
Yeah.
why would he ask her what he looks like if he could see it? Like, I would think that means he can't see it personally,
Right.
but that's just my own.
Yep, I agree. And I think most people agree. I mean, that's what it seems to say. So she's just saying what he's saying. But what we're about to hear is Samuel speaking directly to Saul, right? For the narrative. And you're going to have to decide, okay, can you hear a voice but not see anything? Or is she just saying, here's what it is? And it looks to me in this that she's just going to tell him what he's saying. All right, Fran, you're on a roll. Let's keep going.
Then Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me up?" And Saul answered, "I am in great distress, for the Philistines are warring against me, and God has turned away from me and answers me no more, either by prophets or by dreams. So I have summoned you to tell me what I should do." And Samuel said, "Why then do you ask me, since the Lord has turned away from you and become your enemy? The Lord has done to you just as he spoke by me, for the Lord has torn the kingdom out of your hand and given it to your neighbor David, because you did not obey the voice of the Lord and did not carry out his fierce wrath against Amalek. Therefore, the Lord has done this thing to you today. Moreover, the Lord will give Israel along with you into the hands of the Philistines. And tomorrow you and your sons shall be with me. The Lord will also give the army of Israel into the hands of the Philistines. Immediately Saul fell full length on the ground, filled with fear because of the words of Samuel. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten nothing all day and all night. The woman came to Saul, and when she saw that he was terrified, she said to him, "Your servant has listened to you. I have taken my life in my hand and have listened to what you have said to me. Now, therefore, you also listen to your servant." Let me set a morsel of bread
That's good
before.
enough.
Okay.
That's good enough. We're leaving the context now. She's basically
Okay.
going to take care of him and feed him. She's got a calf out there. She's going to kill it and give it to him, which is very nice of her, but not relevant for our particular our story here. Anything in there that grabbed you or added any more to the story that you wanted to note?
Well, he got some bad news.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. Yep. God has left you and gone to your neighbor David. God is your enemy. Why are you asking him? Yeah, that's not good. I mean, about Saul, about Samuel himself, why have you disturbed me by bringing me up? Kind of tells you at least they think that however people are dead, they're kind of like asleep. We talked about that last week. They're just, they're getting their rest, and somebody had to wake them up. And there are people in the Bible who have that ability to wake up the dead. We call them witches, necromancers, soothsayers, whatever. Right? They have this ability, at least in that understanding. All right, so let's theologize for a second. What should you do with this story? Does Saul really come up from the dead, Samuel? Is this a ghost of Samuel? Is this God just grabbing hold of something and making it because he's just like, all right, listen, you need to hear this. And so he just creates an apparition for Saul to hear? Is this a demon playing a trick? I've heard that one too. What is this? Is this really Samuel or not?
Well, I mean, I think the fact that you said that this story was placed here and it doesn't belong here, I mean, that makes me have a lot of questions about it. Like, I don't want to do a lot of theologizing about something that was put there in the literature to make a political point, because that's why it was put there. Like, that's the theologizing that needs to be done, not the, like, I don't want to deal with, I mean, I don't know what to do with all of that. Like, I it's part of their mythology or whatever, but yeah, like, it's not even about the characters it's about necessarily. Right? The original story?
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have introduced it with all that stuff because, yeah, that automatically gives you a bias against the theologizing. And remember, of course, there'll be scholars out there who are not historical critical scholars, and they will
Sure.
not agree with that statement. They will be like, no.
Of course. Yeah.
So, and that's fine. I'm just trying to give you a different way of thinking about it.
Could it be an apparition from your memory of someone who had an influence on your life earlier?
Oh,
Like
interesting.
a pastor or...
Yeah, movies do that a lot, right? Like where you talk to somebody, either who is dead or, who meant something to you. And at least today in modern day, they talk back and they're like, this is just your own mind, right? Like, but they're talking to them like they're real, and they only know as much as they own, but their mind's deeper. Like it's almost like they're figuring it out and they're talking. So that's an interesting connection there. I mean, I don't know if that's what the author was doing, but maybe.
The original coach. Just talk to yourself.
Yeah.
What is the, I mean, I know there's a lot of, it's a spectrum, right? But what is the general scholarly consensus on the date of Samuel? Like, when was it written?
I think, so I don't know if I'm going to say scholarly consensus, but as I recall, so Samuel is written in order to be an apologetic for David. So it probably would not be either long after David, or some might even argue at least the original stories might have even been monarchical. So they would have been during that time, or to promote David's children. So it could be Solomon, it could be who's his other son, Rehoboam.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course it's done, it splits at that point. So it's pro-Judahite, so Judah would have had to be continuous. I don't know the answer to that. I'll bet you.
Well, if it's in that time period or whatever,
Our Bible
just
says
say,
middle 5th century. Bubba.
So that's a very late for a final redaction.
Yeah.
So 5th century, keep in mind, is I mean, maybe as late as, I mean, that's post-exilic.
Exile, right? Yeah.
Post-exilic, yeah, it's afterwards. And so a lot of critical scholars will put almost all of the Bible at that time.
Then, yeah.
So mine was a very conservative answer. That's a more progressive.
Regardless, like whenever that date was, I would say it would seem to indicate that at that time, like if they're putting this into a story, like either it's okay to talk about ghosts in stories then, or they believe in them, like at some level. I don't know which is true, but I would say one of those two things would have to be true.
Yep.
Jace, could I say, insert one thing here that I saw as I'm scrolling? Billy Graham's sermon on what happens when we die. I thought it was good. I recommend it.
All right. I seldom would recommend anything Billy Graham says when it comes to theology, but
yeah. Well, it
not scholar.
About I enjoyed it. I was glad I came across it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, any other thoughts on what we do with the Pat? I mean, is this really him or not? What do you do with this passage if you're teaching it to Sunday school? At a Sunday school. Is your explanation why there are ghosts, why you know there are ghosts, and that you can bring them up if you have certain powers?
You could use this as a lesson to teach kids that when you try to get around the rules, it doesn't work out for you. He's trying to get around the rules by going to the medium. And then, God just sends this fake person to give him a hard time the whole time, and he doesn't get anything that he wants. So when you try to get around the rules, it doesn't work out, kids.
That's good. Okay. So you wouldn't even deal with the question of ghosts. You would just, like, everyone knows it's a ghost story. So yeah, just
I bet some of us have heard people who are dead speak.
Yeah.
But we know it's in our mind. But we today have those kinds of experiences.
Yeah, not everybody thinks it's in their minds. Some would think that God allowed them to be able to say something to them, to bring something in from that nether world, to give you a source of encouragement. I've had dreams before where I've been spoken to by someone dead that's really encouraged me, like been, a place of real hurt.
Well, I heard my husband speak. He was always like when he would bid on something, he didn't get the bid, and there was a bunch of rock they had to dig up or whatever to get your bill, and he would say, "I fell upstairs on that one." And I was sitting in the living room here, and I heard him loud and his voice clearly say, "Frank, I really fell upstairs this time." That was shortly after he died, and I almost looked to see if he was there, but it was in my head. I know it was in my head.
Yeah.
But some of us might think that he really spoke.
Right. All right. Anybody else? I got some more passages here for sure. Like we got Lazarus.
I think mediums are con artists, and I think even then they were con artists. Because Saul dismissed them. So I think, if she is explaining to him or telling him, it's just her interpretation of a story that she wants to tell him.
So do you think Saul dismissed them because they were con artists, or because they were using, divinization practices where God had said not to do that?
Yes. Well, and why did he say that?
Is it just because they were liars?
I think because they were not truthful. I mean, they were not really able to be diviners, do divination.
I think there's
I think
something
we'd have to.
wrong in the Bible when you are messing with the realms, going between things that you shouldn't be allowed to do. So
Mhm.
that's what a bunch of these monsters we've talked about are. Why did the giants get flushed out? Because they're breaking the rules. They're going between boundaries. Why did angels? All of this stuff. So here we have an example of people that have the ability to go to a different realm. So this time, just the realm of the dead, and that shouldn't
Good
be allowed.
connection.
So kick them out.
Yeah, that's right. They're going beyond the realm that they're supposed to be in. That's right. That's beautiful. That's exactly what we've been talking about.
Mhm.
Huh. I hadn't put that together, but I think that's exactly what's going on. I think
I also
we
think,
have.
oh,
Go ahead, Susie. No, you.
I was just gonna say, I also think we really, I don't know, I grew up in the West, and I think we read a lot of scripture, and understandings of scripture are, more Western in nature. And I think that, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how, I don't know enough about the culture of the ancient Near East, but like, I don't know, just living in another culture in our world, I think that there's a lot more spiritual connection, spiritual world, even like the whole ghost, witch, all that stuff. I don't think we have a lot of that here in the US, maybe Europe. And there is a lot more of that in other parts of the world. But like you know, there's things I don't believe in, but like I've been in places and then there's things that have happened that I can't explain, if that makes sense.
Yep. Totally makes sense. Yeah.
We have the advantage of the Holy Spirit, whereas they had nothing, so they would be more open to strange sequences.
Yeah, perhaps. I'm thinking of some some passages, especially in Hebrew Bible, that in Old Testament, that um, seem to like magic, right? Jacob has, is it Jacob? Yeah, Jacob, who marries Rachel and Leah, right? He has, he's got what we call a striped stick, right? A striped stick which allows him to be blessed, to create a whole herd of sheep that are way bigger than Laban's and everything else. Basically, he has a magic wand that gives him power over the fertility of sheep. No one questions it in the story. It's just he uses this stick in order to do this. He tricks Laban basically and does this and ends up becoming super wealthy. Like a striped stick. Like, all right, cool. And there are other sticks that are able to find water and do different things like that. Like there's some strange magic going on in the Bible. We could do a whole thing on magic. And it certainly feels like the people of that time, the authors, either believed it, like Suzanne said, they either believed it or they put it in the narrative as this is a cool story. Right? And that's okay too. I can easily tell a story about three bears, right, going into a home. And you guys would all listen and take the story and go, okay, it was a good story. I really appreciate you. What's your what's your point? Why did you tell me that story? Okay, well, I told you the story because you want to find just the right place, right in the middle, or something like that. Or a fox and a crow having a conversation. Oh, I told you this so you don't be a flatterer, right? And all of you be fine with that story, true or not true. You don't care. But if I am talking to about a fox and a crow having a conversation, you're going to very quickly realize probably not a true story. You don't have to have me say up front, okay, not a true story. I mean, is it possible that these stories are just stories sermonized in order to get across a point? and that the people who are reading this may not have actually believed, or maybe some of them believed that this really happened and some didn't. Just depended on how educated, what university they went to. Less in the Bible and you're littlest, then right. Let's not talk about the Balaam donkey or the serpent that talks. We'll do that another day. I wonder whether we can't just throw fiction in there in order for a good point. Everyone's like, okay, we hear what you're saying there, author of Samuel. We don't like David. We don't like Saul, and we're very glad that David was the person, and we want him to be on the throne again. If we're talking about a 5th century writing, can't wait for David to be back.
Well, is this a common thing in other ancient Near Eastern texts of the same? Like, do they find these more fantastical? Or what
Sure.
seem to us like fantastical at some level stories?
Sure. I mean, we've talked about the Baal myths. We've talked about Yam and Tiamat. Tremper Longman has a great book. He did his dissertation on Akkadian fictive autobiography. So fictional accounts of stories of people who wrote about themselves in the Akkadian background, right? And they're clearly fictional. Yep. And I said last week, I'm pretty sure the people who live to be 969 years old, I think these are fictive accounts in order to, make a point in the world that they lived in. And we don't know exactly what that point is. But again, the people of old, our ancestors, our giants, our ancestors lived forever. Our ancestors are super kings, right? That's how you tell stories, right? I hope one day when people tell stories about me, Riston and Davin, who were both on here. Wait, Davin's not here anymore. He got bored. Slacker. They're going to tell stories about me beating up other people who were bad guys or something like that. Our dad was the greatest in the neighborhood. Nobody could compare to him. His muscles were blah, 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 blah. Right? It doesn't have to be real, but they're just trying to say, we think our dad's awesome. Yep. We still use that lingo. What lingo? What do you go further?
I said we stand on the shoulders of giants, or you stand on the shoulders of giants. That's a common phrase still. It's not as common as it used to be, but it's still used today.
Yeah, we stand on the shoulders of the giants of the past, right? Like we're not recreating the wheel here. I'm just using what they've already done, and it's awesome and helping, and we're critiquing it a little bit. Yeah, so that's just the terminology. Okay, let's keep this stuff in mind, or we're never going to finish these specific points. Daniel, let me jump to Daniel 12, 1 and 2. We'll just kind of read that real quickly. It says at that time, so this would be, from a historical critical perspective, this would probably be 2nd century. Okay, so this is the time in between the testaments, really. So Daniel is not one of the prophets, just FYI, those of you who are following your canonical order. This is one of the writings. It's a much later text. So 2nd century. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There'll be a time of distress such as not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Now we've got a book that names are written in. You're going to remember that from Revelation. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth, eretz. Okay, dust. Remember dust, which is exactly how God creates people out of the dust. They sleep in the dust of the earth, will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. All right, so we have the beginnings of a futuristic understanding of an afterlife. Okay, this is really the beginnings of it. We've got little tiny hints, but you've got to do some really creative interpretational jumps in order for there to be an afterlife before this time. Okay? And this is not exactly an afterlife either, right? They're going to be raised to everlasting life or to shame and everlasting contempt. We've got to ask all kinds of questions of what do you mean by raised? What do you mean by everlasting? The everlasting just means aionios in Greek. It's just it's till the end of days or whatever for a long time. It doesn't necessarily mean forever and ever and ever. And also it might mean raised in the sense of have a reputation, right? They're lifted up. So again, the afterlife of people throughout Hebrew Bible is that they'll be remembered. That's what their afterlife was. Okay, but I think Daniel's starting to work towards something else, which we're going to see more clearly in the New Testament, right? But it doesn't. New Testament doesn't clear things up about the afterlife. It's not. If you think there's a heaven and a hell, like you see on the road signs going down, where are you going to go, heaven or hell? It means you really haven't read the Bible. You don't really understand what they're doing in the Bible, right? There's not that kind of a contrast between heaven and hell. That's not even in the New Testament. But there is more of a push towards that. And the word hell, of course, we've got lots of different nuances here, from Sheol in the Old Testament to like Gehenna, Hades, Tartarus, the abyss, right? So all that stuff is in there. And Hades is just Sheol. It's the place of the dead, the netherworld. And so you're going to start to see it in Revelation 6. I think it's Revelation 6, where maybe it's chapter 4. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Like, the souls are under the altar. Remember, they're under the altar and they're crying out, "How long, O Lord, how long?" Right? So the souls are dead, right? We don't have the souls. Soul just means living thing, right? It's like their life force, their essence, whatever that is. It's what you're like, there were 300 souls lost on the ship. It just means that their lives were lost. But now the lives are there, but their bodies are here, but their lives, they're underneath the altar, which, again, don't picture like heaven is this other place, right? This is just a way of saying they're with God in some sense. Okay, it's not like their bodies are here and their souls are there, and then one day they're going to. That's a very dualistic understanding of what they're trying to accomplish there. But whatever, there's dead souls under the altar in Revelation. And then Luke 16 is a very cool passage as well. We should probably glance at it because we have a few minutes here. We probably won't get to 1 Corinthians 15, but you can look up that on your own, or we can deal with it next time. But Luke 16 says, let's see here. Anybody but Fran want to read this? Starting in verse 19. Not against you, Fran, but you already had enough time.
I can read it.
I don't have it anyway.
All right, I think Trisha said she's got it. Go ahead.
Jesus said there was a certain rich man who was splendidly clothed in purple and fine linen, and who lived each day in luxury. At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, who was covered with sores. As Lazarus lay there longing for scraps from the rich man's table, the dogs would come and lick his open sores. Finally, the poor man died and was carried by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried, and his soul went to the place of the dead. There in
Hades.
torment, he saw Abraham in the far distance with Lazarus at his side. The rich man shouted, "Father, Abraham, have some pity. Send Lazarus over here to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue. I am in anguish in these flames." But Abraham said to him, "Son, remember that during your lifetime, you had everything you wanted, and Lazarus had nothing. So now he is sure being comforted, and you are in anguish. And besides, there is a great chasm separating us. No one can cross over to you from here, and no one can cross over to us from there." Then the rich man said, "Please, Father Abraham, at least send him to my father's home, for I have 5 brothers, and I want him to warn them so they don't end up in this place of torment." But Abraham said, Moses and the prophets have warned them. Your brothers can read what they wrote." The rich man replied, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone is sent to them from the dead, then they will repent of their sins and turn to God." But Abraham said, "If they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't listen even if someone rises from the dead."
Excellent. All right, which always bothered me, right? I was like, we wouldn't listen to somebody. If somebody rose from the dead, somebody came back and told me that, I would be like, I'm with you. I'm listening 100%. But remember, Luke is writing this after the resurrection event, right? And trying to write for a reason. So he's saying, you're not even following the Jesus that rose from the dead. Right? So it's looking back. All right, so we got the rich man, we got Lazarus. Lazarus has a name, the rich man doesn't. Abraham is there. They're in the bosom of Abraham, whatever that means. One's in flames, one is not. One has water, the capability of having water, right? What do we think of this passage? Like, if this is something that's happening, it feels like very developed. Okay, they're in different parts of the same place in the dead. They can see each other. They can have conversations, maybe, right? Like one's like, there's just like this curtain or something, or a chasm, a break in there. Go ahead.
Well, this is a parable, right? So, like parables, like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Like parables aren't literal ever. Like Jesus is telling stories for a reason, right? Jesus is telling
Except for
this,
it
right?
doesn't say it's a parable.
Well, it does in my version in the extra biblical text.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the heading.
Right, in the heading that's not part of the Bible. That's right. Somebody decided it's a parable.
Sorry. So that was maybe some interpretation there. But yeah. Did Jesus always identify his parables as parables when he spoke them?
Well, we don't know what Jesus did, but the authors
Usually did. Yeah.
say, and Jesus told them this parable. So this is the only one that would not be identified that way.
That way he didn't say it.
Which doesn't mean anything really, except for what we just said. It absolutely could be a parable.
Parables are in italics and the other part are in bold, right? Isn't that how it works? I'm just kidding.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, genre markers aren't always that clear, right? It's wonderful if it tells you what the genre is. Hey, what I'm about to tell you is a fictional story. Wonderful. Thank you. Helpful. But sometimes genre markers are things like Once Upon a Time. That's a genre marker, and you have to know, okay, fictional story. Or a frog and a toad started talking. Okay, genre. Okay, animals don't talk. Got it. Okay, so this one looks like a parable. Everything about it talks like a parable, except for has a real person, Lazarus. He has a name. And Lazarus, I mean, you know the history of Lazarus, right? This is the guy who got up from the dead. So I wonder if there's not something in there with this story. Like, did at least some people think of this as a ghost thing? Like maybe he came up, but he was still there and he was kind of alive, but not alive. I don't know. I'm just putting like these two different stories with the same name, and both of them have to do with dead ideas. There might be something there. I've never read a dissertation on it. But
maybe he had a hall pass.
That's right. Yes, he had a pass into this life. Yeah.
Temporary.
Yep. So if it's a parable, Suzanne, you would just say, well, it's just a parable, so we don't have to take anything from it, maybe.
I think we take a lot from it. I mean, yeah, it's clearly a story, regardless of whether it's a parable or not. It's clearly a story because you're making yourself bigger. Because no one's been, like, these aren't places that humans have been to, right? Well, I guess, I mean, if you're going to take it literally, I guess they have. But like, none of the audience of this text, either they're listening to Jesus or reading these stories when they were first written, would have been to these places. So it has to be literature in some sense because you're describing whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like when anybody talks about things that, we talk about the afterlife. None of us, we don't have any idea. But of course, if it's the Bible, we just say, well, they did have an idea because God inspired it and God told them what to write. What I'm trying to do is say, did it really work that way? Like, is that what inspiration means, that God told them to write that? Or were they just writing things in their collective understanding that other people would grasp in order to make a different point? And God was like, yeah, that's cool.
Have you ever done that in a sermon, Jace?
I do it all the time in sermons.
Oh.
Yep. Now, I've learned that some people, in 25 years of doing this, some people don't like it when I don't tell the truth in a sermon. And I'm not trying to make a joke there. Like they don't like it when I just tell a story and then later on, like when we're having dinner, I say, well, yeah, that wasn't really a story about me and my roommate. That was just a story I made up. And they're just like, what? Most people are perfectly fine with that. Like 95% of people, I'm just making up. I've never taken a poll, but they're just like, of course, you're sermonizing. You're just having fun. So now, because I know there's a few people who don't like it when I do fictive accounts like that, I usually tell them I'm lying right in the sermon. Just for those few people that would be frustrated. So I'll tell a story about, my whatever incredible soccer skills, how I was, on a team for Brazil, they recruited me, and then I'll be like, yeah, I play an average game at best. So, but I tell the story like it's real to get to the point. Yep. So that's a genre. For me, sermonizing is a genre. It's like fiction. It's like, a narrative. It's like an epistle sermon. And I actually think we should probably think about the Bible largely in sermonizing genre. That other people were writing sermons that will fit during their time, and then other people later on interpreted those stories for their new population, and they took the story and went a different direction with that story. So that they're not necessarily trying to interpret what was the original thing that was meant there. They're actually using it for something different. And that's okay. Which scares me a little bit as an exegete, what I'm supposed to do with that story now. Like, do I follow in that same vein and just make up something later? I don't.
Well, what's interesting is too what you just said. Like, you've learned that, like, you're sermonizing and you're assuming that people aren't taking you literally, but you've learned that some people do, and so you've adapted to that. Like, so even that, like, I mean, yeah, like you're assuming that maybe the majority of people aren't going to take it literally and aren't going to be bothered if it's a lie or whatever you want to call it. Like, they don't realize it's not a story or whatever. But like, you've changed, you've adapted. So it's that's interesting too, even in itself, the example you gave.
All right. Well, we've got like 2 minutes. I'll say a word about the evolution of death over the time, or just maybe that's what I'll just say. Remember, death evolves over time. The idea of the dead or people living in during that time. And the reason for it, right, would be an attempt to remove the hollowness of being dead. Like, we just don't want to leave that there. We want to do something more with it. Or so they move to hell or heaven so that it has like a final thing. Or maybe to create hope in a world that was seeming very hopeless. So we want to create some kind of an idea. And there's been tons of movies about that, right? Just give them hope. Let them live in this hope. Tell them the right thing. Is it going to be okay? It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, right? Give them that hope, even though you're lying, even though you're not doing that. And I'm not saying the Bible's lying, please. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it's creating a story in order to get across a hope that is real, a real hope, but maybe not the hope like the way we paint it. Streets of gold, no more tears. There might be just a continuation of this kind of, we don't know. That's all prophetic imagination. And maybe they do it in order to redeem the character of God, which is, again, something that we've been thinking throughout this whole thing, right? Because God seems to come with some atrocious monsters at his side. And, it seems to like throw people into Sheol and be done with them. And we're just like, wait, but the people who go to Sheol are both good people and incredibly evil people. And that just doesn't fit an evolving concept of who God is. It definitely fits the warlike God of 3,000 years ago, the God who just comes in and takes out countries because he wants his land, right? But God himself, or maybe not God himself, but the literary God, right, seems to evolve. We call this progressive revelation, right? He's constantly revealing himself. And the New Testament is that beautiful revelation of, hey, what they wrote in the Old Testament, I'm okay with what they wrote, but I need you to understand that it's not exhaustive and it doesn't portray me in the way that I really want you to see me. There are aspects of it that are really beautiful. There are aspects of it that I really didn't like. Okay, but maybe that's where you were at that time, or who knows, but I want to show you what I'm really like. And so we read now, theologizing, back through a Jesus lens. So I think you need to read God through the cross every time. You need to look back and say, is this what God would do? And when you come up with an answer that Jesus on the cross would not do that, then you need to re-look at your Old Testament passage and say, now what do I do with this? You don't automatically say, it's done, I'm throwing it out. But you say, wow, how did it move to this? If God reveals himself most clearly in Jesus on the cross, sacrifice, forgiveness, why is it that he didn't do that in the story? What's the point of that? Why don't they see it that way? Is it just primitive understanding, or is there some sort of a hermeneutical move we're supposed to be making? And we're going to finalize this whole thing in 1 Corinthians 15, right, where the resurrected body, this is that passage that everybody loves to hear about the resurrection. And we're not going to talk about it here because I'm already 2 minutes over. But this is the dead rising again. This is our great hope. This is like the ultimate evolution of this Eretz netherworld story, is that we go into the grave, but the grave will give up its dead, right? In Revelation, remember this beautiful idea. It's going to give up its dead. It's going to explode, like vomit it out. And the dead will then rise, Ezekiel 37 kind of thing, back into life and life more abundant. And that's our great hope, that the body will rise immortal, or a spiritual body, right? Which doesn't mean ethereal body, but an immortal body, one that will last forever. And forever be with the Lord. Whatever that looks like. Again, mythological language. Remember, U16, mythological doesn't mean fictional. It just means it's a story bigger than itself, is what I mean when I say it, right? It's a way of telling stories in order to get across bigger ideas. Doesn't mean the stories are true or untrue, historical or unhistorical. That's something you have to decide for yourself. All right, so that's the evolution all the way through up into the book of Revelation. And then we've got to decide, as good theologians, what do we do with it now? Like, does Revelation stop us from going any further? Or should we continue to evolve this story? And we do that in a lot of ways, right? We do continue to evolve the story. Most of you, I hope at this point, do not believe slavery is a good thing. My guess is Paul probably did. Right? You've continued to evolve the story because you've looked through the cross. You've seen that things are progressing. How do we progress? What do we do with that? What do we do with women in ministry? I'm guessing that there are some people in the Bible who do not see women in ministry as a good thing. Okay, maybe just in certain contexts, that's going to be an exegetical argument, but there's a movement. Should we be caring about that? I think we should. So anyway, all right, it's 9:19. I don't know how I ended up with women in ministry as the end thing we were talking about. But the Bible evolves. That was the point. We need to be evolving with it. See where we're at. All right, let's shut this baby down.